Today, I'm going to transform this Chery Tiggo 7 from this into this. But before we do that, let's start with the acceleration and braking tests, and I hope you'll stick with me until the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. For the acceleration and braking test, I'll put the car into sport mode and launch it. Honestly, for a Chinese SUV with an engine like this, I really didn't expect it to hit 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 7 seconds. Yes, you heard that right. And we come to the braking section, where the car was able to record a speed of 38 meters, which I think could be a standard number. Let's move on to the suspension test. This is a city-oriented crossover, so it should deliver decent comfort and stability. We start with the cobblestone surface. The performance is average. In my opinion, it could have done a little better, but we didn't stop there. Next, we took it onto a rough, bumpy road, where things were about to get much more challenging. But surprisingly, the car managed to stay under control and the passengers weren't too uncomfortable. What's interesting is that on the cobblestone surface, the passengers felt quite a bit of vibration, yet on the rough road, despite all the bumps, the experience wasn't really any worse. Still, let's move on. Now it's time for the urban speed bumps, where this crossover should perform well. After all, that's exactly what it's designed for. It can even handle road trips if needed. The performance here was good. But now we need to see how it performs in the Moose test. So I took the car into the Moose test course. At 55 kilometers per hour, it passed successfully. Then I increased the speed to 65 kilometers per hour, and once again it managed to complete the test. However, there was a lot of instability. The car constantly wanted to slide around. At higher speeds, it struggled to maintain its line, and if I pushed it any harder, it probably would have rolled over. That's definitely not a good sign from a safety perspective. So that counts as a negative point for the vehicle. But we're not stopping here. Now it's time for the main crash tests. First, we'll start with the roof strength and rollover tests. For the roof strength test, we place the car under the crusher to see how much force the pillars can withstand. As you can see, this car surprised us with an incredible result of around 49,000 newtons. Yes, you heard that right, 49,000 newtons. For a Chinese vehicle, that's a very impressive number. And remember, this was one of the cars you requested, so if there's another vehicle you'd like me to test, let me know in the comments. Now let's move on to the rollover test, where the car needs to prove its safety. And yes, as you can see, despite taking a very severe impact, it performed remarkably well. What's even more interesting is that this mod version of the vehicle actually includes airbags, which is pretty cool. But let me know in the comments, how many safety stars do you think this car deserves? Now let's move on to the main crash tests, starting with the 50% frontal offset crash. As you can see, the car performed very well. Thanks to the airbag system, it managed to protect the occupants effectively, especially the front passengers. Yes, especially the front passengers, because the rear passengers didn't really experience anything particularly concerning during this test. Next up is the full frontal crash. Here, the car once again delivered a solid performance, which is honestly what I expected. However, I found it very strange that the airbags didn't deploy. I genuinely don't know why. It almost seems like the impact needed to be even harder for them to activate. So I moved on to the head-on crash test to give the car a more severe impact. Yet once again, the airbags refused to deploy. I'm not sure whether this is a software bug or an issue with the mod itself. Either way, the car still performed well in the test. I haven't tested many Chinese vehicles so far, but the ones I have tested have shown surprisingly good safety performance. I also highly recommend checking out my Xiaomi SU7 video. That's another Chinese vehicle from a very familiar brand. Now let's move on to the rear end crash test. The performance here was good, but the car suffered a tremendous amount of damage. Honestly, it was damaged so badly that I don't think it would even be worth repairing afterward. Next is the side impact crash test. Here, I'd like to hear your opinion. Do you think the car managed to protect its occupants? Personally, with the side airbags you can see here, I think it did a good job. But to make it easier for you to judge, I'll switch the camera to the interior view so you can see exactly what happened. Now we move on to the difficult part. A truck traveling at 45 kilometers per hour crashes into the rear of our vehicle while a trailer weighing around 12 tons sits directly in front of it. The car was literally turned into a sandwich, yet it still managed to protect its occupants. This really shows the level of attention Chinese manufacturers are now paying to safety, and I can honestly say that China's automotive industry has made huge progress. But we're going to make things even harder. This time, I positioned the vehicle with a 50% overlap against the rear of the trailer, and boom! As you can see, the impact was absolutely brutal. The car took a massive hit here. Honestly, I don't even know what to say. I can't confidently tell you whether the driver would have survived this crash. The impact was simply that severe. So I'll leave that judgment up to you. Do you think the driver made it out alive? Now let's move on to the final test, the pedestrian crash test. Yes, that's right. Recently, I've started including pedestrian safety tests in these videos because I want to see how well vehicles protect not only their occupants, but also pedestrians. The goal is to find out how much damage the vehicle causes during a collision with a pedestrian. As you can see, the pedestrian took a very heavy hit. But once again, I'll leave the final judgment up to you. Do you think the pedestrian survived? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.